It's the 5th of July 2024 and the market is down 25%. And all influencers can tell you is this is normal, but what I think is also normal is that people are panicking. Obviously, the market is down 25% for the last 30 days, but I think when you are in doubt, it's time that you actually should zoom out. Because if you look at where the market is for the year, for the 12 months, then it is up 76%. Now, this is why I always say that one, when you start investing, don't look at it on a weekly basis. And I'm sure that many of you are looking at your crypto portfolios on a daily basis. Do not even look at it on a monthly basis, but at least quarter to a year, for instance. Now, many of you may have come to crypto because you see the testimonials, etc. For instance, if you look at the testimonials on our website, if you were to ask those people what they actually went through, then you will realize that this is perfectly normal. Because you can't get into this industry and only expect the 500% growth without taking an occasional 25% dip. But obviously, you do not lose anything unless you sell at this point of time. So if you, for instance, got into projects that haven't launched as yet, obviously you are not affected. It hasn't launched as yet, like the NFTs and some of the private sales. But if you got into certain cryptos that is obviously in your wallet, then you see that dip. But with us being here for close to a decade, we know that this is perfectly normal, and even before we launched the NMS token, we obviously prepared for this, hence you'll see that the NMS token is up. But even if a majority of people goes and sell, which is a good thing, which you should understand, especially when you have watched our DCA video at NMS Academy /DCA. So I get it, and people are panicking. It actually makes me think of Moses and the Israelites in the wilderness when they asked him, did you bring us here to die? And that might be going through your head when you think of why did I actually come to crypto. However, let me bring context. Mt. Gox is an exchange, something like Luno or Altcoin Trader, but let's say Binance because it was the biggest exchange at the time. And what happened is they actually were operating in countries illegally. And as a result, they were closed down. And let's say one Bitcoin was about 1,000 Rand back in the day. 1,000, more than a decade ago. So what's happening now? The exchange was closed and people couldn't get access to their funds. Now, with the investigations and everything having gone their way, now people are actually getting back their cryptocurrency. Now, think of it. If you had 2 Bitcoins back then, 1 Bitcoin was only 1,000 Rand, which means you had 2,000 Rands worth of Bitcoin. And now, 1 Bitcoin is over a million. Now, people are obviously panicking and they are selling because remember, if you had 2 Bitcoin back then, you had a 2,000 Rand. So now 2 Bitcoin is obviously over 2 million. Whether people are selling Bitcoin when it is 1.2 million or 1.3 million or 1.1 million, they just don't care because they are still in profit. Likewise, so this is obviously a temporary dip, and those who obviously know the DCA strategy knows that it is this time when we obviously stock up on our cryptocurrency because we know that this is temporary. Now you might be saying that I can't afford a 25% loss, but like I said, if you don't sell, you haven't lost anything. And you might be saying, you know what, I have a small portfolio, and it's easy for someone to say that when they have a bigger portfolio. But let me bring context. Let's say your portfolio at the beginning of this month was 10,000. That means that currently it may be around about 7.5, 8,000, and it may be something big to you. But think of the person that had a portfolio worth a million at the beginning of this month, and currently it is around about 800k. So which means that person, if they were to sell now, they are like losing 200k. The bigger the portfolio, the bigger the loss actually. But in terms of percentage, it's the same. That's why I always say that the same discipline it takes to actually build a 1,000 rand portfolio or 2,000 rand portfolio is the same discipline as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. In fact, it becomes even more difficult because you're thinking in numbers and not in percentages. That is why it's important that you think in percentages and you actually stay consistent. So that is why I obviously say that, you know what, it doesn't matter where you start, but you just need to start, because that type of mindset that you had when you got started, that is the same kind of mindset that will actually take you further and further and further and further. It's important to obviously understand that. But if you zoom out and you think a year ago, if the person had 10,000, yes, at the beginning of this month, it would have obviously been 100%, so it would be 20,000. But now it is obviously down plus minus 25%. Likewise, the person who, for instance, had 1 million a year ago, and beginning of this month it would have been double, 2 million, but now you see a drop of obviously like 25%. If you zoom out, then you're like, okay, no, makes perfectly sense, because you can't only expect for the market to go up only, but it obviously also comes down during the process of it obviously trending upwards. So this is just a small dip, and I'm 100% sure that if we look at this like 5 months, 3 months, and 6 months from now, and then you wouldn't even notice it on the chart. Because I remember we had the ETFs happening, we had the halving happening, and the best is yet to come. So 2 months from now, we'll obviously be laughing at this dip, because, like I said, that it is perfectly normal, and one can't actually want to participate in the 500 or 1,000% growth without experiencing these temporary dips. So, guys, I know that it's perfectly normal for you to obviously be a bit worried, but now that you have context, I'm sure that you understand that this is a long play, and we know that better days are yet to come. See you in my next video.